Welcome to RV Woodworks. My name is Rahim, and if what's on the table doesn't give you a slight hint of what we're going to talk about today, let me give you a little story. I was working on completing a couple of chairs for my home about a couple of weeks ago, and I was using my Ryobi sander, which I've had now for about 7 or so years. And here's what happened to it. So with that said, I think a quick moment of silence, as I think that's it for our Ryobi sender.
Enough with the Ryobi.
Okay, we're going to get right to it. So I did what any good woodworker would do. I turned to YouTube. I looked at videos from 731 Woodworks. I looked at videos from Pete Millard on the other side of the pond. I looked at Stumpy Nubs. And I also looked at Woodworker Web and many others. And I'm going to put all the links to those videos in the description. But my goal was to try to find the right sander for my shop. Just before we dive into this video, I do want to be clear that I did spend my own money, and this is not a sponsored video. I spent about $2,000 buying all the different sanders as well as the sanding paper to do this test because I didn't find this kind of video out on YouTube. Let me explain what I mean. I can break up the different types of sanders that are available in the market into three major categories. You have the consumer brand, which there's a DEWALT here, but there's many others, and 731 Woodworks. Matt does a phenomenal video on, I think, about 12 or 15 different sanders that he compared. So that's one level, and that is the level between, let's say, $50 to $150. Then you have the more professional grade sanders, which there's a 3M Xtract here, which I think revolutionizes sanding a bit. But then you have the Festools, and you have the Mirka, and then you have the 3M, and that's the higher grade, higher end sanders that you can purchase. But then there's this middle category of sanders that want to act like the professional grade, but might not be. I don't know. But they're definitely better than the consumer brand levels. What I did not find on YouTube was this type of a comparison. What I always found was a consumer level with these two brands, or the professional grade with these two brands. But I didn't find a comparison that did all of them all at once. That's what I want to do today. I hope you stick around for the video. I have a few tips that I'd love to share to make your sanding even better and make these sanders last longer. So without further ado, let's roll that intro and let's get right into it. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So I have a piece of wood here that's on a couple of clamps that I'm going to use to sand to see how these sanders work. But I think first and foremost, let's open these boxes up and see what we get in each one of these sanders. So let's start with the consumer brand, and I'll bring you into the top so you can see exactly what I get. All right, guys, we're going to do a quick unboxing of all these to see what we get in the box. And first and foremost, we'll do the DEWALT. So, pretty simple packaging. You get the sander. We'll measure the length of this here in a bit and see why that's important. Here's the sander. This is a variable speed sander, which I think is very important when it comes to a fine sanding. You get a dust collection. I do not use this dust collection. I usually connect my own dust extractor or shop vac to this, but you do get that. You get the instructions, and finally you get a little bag to put it in. Okay, let's put that aside and let's see what we get with our other brands. So this is a brand called PioneerWorks. Now, there are other sanders that look exactly like this that have different names on them. So I think depending on where you live, you might be able to get something very similar with a different brand name. And I'm going to have the prices as well as the Amazon links on all these sanders in the video description. But before we do that, let's find out what the pros and cons are for each. pretty tightly packed. You've got the user instructions, and then you are presented with the dust collection pipe, and finally the actual sander itself. Initial thoughts, does seem pretty heavy. I'm not sure if I'm going to be a fan of this dust collection or the trigger, but we'll soon find out. A longer cord than what we got with our DEWALT. We'll put that aside for a bit, and let's see what else we get in the box here. Oh, some tools and some connections. And I think that this particular dust collection valve is not a normal port, so I think that's probably why they give you some of these included in the package. We'll get that into the detail with that in just a minute here. I don't think there's anything else in the package. Oh, yes, there is. There's lots more in the package. So they're also giving you some sanding paper. They're all 6 inches. We'll get into the details of which ones they give you here in just a second. Let's get into the next one. Open up this one, and here you are presented with some sandpaper initially. A 5-inch disc. This is one of the benefits that I found with this one. You get the 5-inch and the 6-inch. Here's a sander, much longer cord. And here is a sander itself. Alright. We'll get into the first thoughts here in a second, but that is it. That's all you get in this box. We'll continue pushing forward. 4 unboxings in one, 4 unboxings in one. And finally, the 3M Xtract. Wow. All right. All right. So this one, I can already tell the quality of the cord is better on this one. Woo! It's in there. There we go. There she is. And you get some nice thick manual with this one as well. Alright, well, that was a pretty quick unboxing. We'll bring you back up and we'll start to talk about these sanders. Alright guys, so I've put everything away as far as the other things that you get with the sanders, and we just had the sanders in front of us. I wanted to kind of give you my first initial thoughts about each of these sanders and some of the things that I've noticed while I was unpacking them. And then we'll get into turning them on and seeing what they sound like. I have not turned any one of them on yet. I'm going to do it with you. So let's get right into it. So I wanted to talk about some of the few key things that I've seen here. So let's start with the cords. Now, as far as the cord is concerned, I will say that the DEWALT and the 3M Xtract are very high quality cords. The 3M still being a little bit higher end, it's a little bit rubbery feeling. It's a good texture of a cord, but the grade, the gauge of the cord is very similar to each one of these. Beyond that, I think the MAXXT is very close to the 3M, but again, I would say 3M is number 1, DEWALT is number 2, MAXXT is number 3, and then PioneerWorks is down at number 4, probably a 5, because they saved some money when it came to putting the cords together. Now the length of the cord is also very important. So this the DEWALT is 6 feet, PioneerWorks is 10 feet, and both MAXXT as well as 3M Xtract are both 16 feet, which is very important because you want to be able to maneuver around your project, and therefore having a long cord is very important. Next thing we'll talk about is probably dust collection. So on the DEWALT, if you can see inside, the the exterior looks like it's 1.5 inches, just a little over 1.5 inches diameter on the circle. But the actual dust port inside, that you can see there's a inside hole as well, that's where the actual dust collection is coming from. That's only 3/4 of an inch. So depending on the type of dust collector or shop vac you have, you might need to get some extension. So I have this thing which is going to fit in here, and that's going to connect to my shop vac. When it comes to PioneerWorks, I'm not impressed by what that's been provided by them. This pipe is very low quality. It is a longer size pipe. I can tell you how long it is, but honestly, the quality of plastic that they have used is not very good. And I have a feeling this is going to be, I don't want to say a deal breaker just yet, but it's not going to be something that I'm going to enjoy very much. They give you a pipe that is 7 feet. So I guess what it does is it's as long as the cord, maybe a little bit short, but it's almost as long as a cord. Now, they do give you connectors in the box, like I said earlier. So this connector you get, in the box, and you also get this connector here. It's in there. This connector here. So the way that it works is this pipe is exactly the same on each end, but you can see, this is what I'm talking about. Look at the quality of that. Doesn't take very much to bend it. But this will fit in here, and then this will fit in here. So it's set up there. Now on this side, this is not going to fit into any shop vac. So they knew that. So they've given you an extender here, and then they've given you this rubbery multi-staged connector. So this will fit in here, and then this will fit on my shop vac. Now the only benefit of doing it this way, I would presume, is it is further away where the connectors are, and it is lighter weight plastic, I guess, so maybe that's a benefit, but we'll see how the dust collection is, but that's how it's going to work for this one. Now when it comes to the MAXXT, it has a similar system as the PioneerWorks, but their quality of the pipe is much better, and it's also free flow here. So it's not that it's stuck in there and it's going to get stuck while you're sanding. So this comes off and have friction fit kind of plug that this goes into, and then on the other end, it's again a plastic pipe, but they've given you a friction fit plug that fits there at the end. Now I have this piece here, so what I'll have to do is kind of connect it like this, and then this will connect to my shop vac. Again, the length of this one is not as long as a PioneerWorks, but it is much bigger in diameter, and it's definitely better quality. As far as the length of the pipe that you get with the MAXXT is about 41 inches. Yeah, right at 41 inches, so just a little over 3 feet. So it is helpful to have that connector going further away from you. Ideally, I think for all three of these, and maybe even the DEWALT, what I would do is just kind of put some tape or something on these so that it's kind of one piece all the way across, and that way you're not trying to take care of two different pipes at once. Lastly, talk about 3M Xtract. Now look, a lot of people that buy this one will also buy their dust collection system or dust extraction system, so that'll obviously fit very nicely. I don't have that, and I use a shop vac, so I have a connector that'll fit in here, and then this will connect to my larger dust collection system, and therefore that'll be resolved as well. Now, as far as the quality, there you go. That's the quality of the pipe that I was talking about. We'll probably have to tape this down or something to make sure this doesn't come out. As far as the quality of the dust extraction, we'll see that here in a bit. But I want to talk about the actual sanders here for one more thing that I actually noticed while I was looking at this. Now, these are orbital sanders, right? Random orbital sanders. So these discs vibrate and they spin at the same time. And the more they spin, the more they vibrate, the quicker your sanding goes. And therefore, the lesser time you have to do the dreadful sanding that every woodworker hates. Now, what I noticed was, if you see this one, the disc is not loose. It is like it's on there, and I'm assuming as the motor turns, it'll obviously move, but it's not free moving. That's the same case for the MAXXT as well. So you see, it doesn't continue moving after I let go. But on the PioneerWorks, it is free flowing. That's very good. And then in 3M, same thing. It also kind of keeps moving. So that'll definitely impact the type of rotation and the sanding that we get. We'll get more details as we do the sanding. I wanted to highlight one more thing that I noticed that was very interesting. So none of these, except the MAXXT, the pads have any give. They're, I wouldn't say completely hard, but they're not soft. Whereas MAXXT's pad, it actually has a little bit of cushioning in it, which I personally like. And when you're doing like edge sanding or trim sanding, having something that has a little bit of cushion to it will help it kind of grab the contour better, and therefore you don't mess up or do too much sanding, or you kind of hold that curve better with that. So I actually like that quite a bit about this one as well. One last thing that I wanted to mention before we get into the actual sanding is when you specifically buy the MAXXT, you actually have the option to buy two different kinds. One is an option where you get just a 6-inch disc, and if you pay, I think $35 more, link in the description will have the exact price difference between the two. You can also get the 5-inch disc as well, which I was spending money for the 6-inch anyway, so I figured I'd spend a little bit more and get the 5-inch as well. I can see the benefit of having that if I'm doing a smaller project, etc., and I don't want to use a 6-inch disc. I can swap it out for a 5-inch disc. And one additional positive thing about this particular sander is they give you an O-ring or a rubber ring with it. This is the ring that is here that kind of protects the disc. So if that ever goes out, they give you a spare one, which that's a positive for the MAXXT. I think another thing that's kind of important for us to talk about is center of gravity, right? So when you are holding these sanders, they all feel very similar as far as the location where you're kind of holding them, with the exception of the DEWALT, which is very different. But I think it's very important to kind of identify the depth, right? So the DEWALT is a little over 5.5 inches from the surface. The PioneerWorks is closer to 5 inches, just shy of 5 inches. The MAXXT is about 4.5 inches. And then the lowest would be your 3M Xtract, which is actually at an astounding 3.5 inches. So this will be the lowest to your surface. I presume that would help kind of control the project more. But I'll give you my thoughts on that specifically more when we get into sanding. And as we get into sanding, I have purchased some 3M Xtract paper. I think the one that I want to use for this one is the 120 grit. Got a whole box of it. And look, John Katz-Moses put a link to that video in the description, has done a phenomenal video on these particular sanding discs. They're mesh, so you can see through them a little bit, and they do a phenomenal job. Once I tried this, I promise you, I just never went back. I still have the older ones in my drawer, but I just don't use them anymore. But these are phenomenal discs. I encourage you to buy a starter pack. I know they actually sell a starter pack that has all different kinds, and I had this out just to show you. I think this costs like $10. And it comes with 12 different discs, 280s, 2 120s, 2 180s, 2 220s, 2 240s, and 2 320s. So I encourage you guys to try this. Once you try this, you will not go back. But without further ado, let's plug these bad boys in. Let's do some sanding and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay guys, I've got them all plugged in. They're not connected to the dust collector and the sanding discs are here, but they're not actually plugged in or connected to the dust collector. What I want to do is I want to test the sound on how loud these are. Then I want to test how quickly they stop turning because we did notice about the free flowing. So I wanted to see if there was anything there that was worthwhile to check. And then lastly, I also want to do an interesting test. So I have a glass of water here, and I want to touch the sanders to the water to see how much they vibrate, so you can get a good feeling of how much vibration there is. Now my Ryobi probably would have knocked the water out. The 7-year-old sander, every 15 minutes or so, I would have to turn it off and move my hands around. It would make it fall asleep. But let's see how these do. Let's get started. So let's start with the sound first. I'll bring it close to my mic so you can hear the difference. Hey, so very interesting. Obviously, the DEWALT was much louder, and I'm sure you could tell over the audio. The other thing I noticed was the PioneerWorks really kind of just kept going, spinning quite a long time after it was done. So did the 3M Xtract. I felt like there was some kind of a stopping mechanism that started there, but I don't know, it just kept going for a while. But wow, the MAXXT just came to a stop. It clearly has a stopping mechanism on there. So that was very interesting. Let's go with the next test on seeing how much vibration they have. This is an interesting one. Let's take a look. All right. I think that was a very interesting test. Um, Obviously, the DEWALT had the most amount of vibration in the glass. And the other three were very comparable, to be honest with you. PioneerWorks was slightly more on the vibration side than the other two, but MAXXT and 3M, I mean 3M is all you really hear is the wind, and it's a dream. But I think MAXXT and 3M Xtract were very similar from a vibration perspective. This one definitely has more vibration, and you could tell the difference when you use this and then you go use one of those. There is a huge difference. So the next test is the actual sanding itself. I will speed the rest of this video up, but what basically I just want to kind of explain what I'm going to do is I'm going to create lines on my board here, and I'm going to use the sander for about 30 seconds to 45 seconds on the first initial run to see how much it takes away, and then I'll go until all the lines are gone, and then I'll come back with my final thoughts on which sander does well in the sanding itself. The dust extractor is hooked up, so it will get loud because I will turn on my dust collector as well, but I'll make sure to turn the audio down for you so that it doesn't bother your ears. Here we go. No one wants to watch someone sand, but are you enjoying this content? If you are, please consider clicking that like button. It'll be much appreciated. And if you like this kind of content, click that subscribe button so you don't miss the next content. I'll let this guy continue, but thanks again for your support. Welcome back, guys. Let me give you my final thoughts about these 4 sanders. Let me actually start off by doing this first. PioneerWorks is absolutely a no-go for me, and I'm going to explain this to you by means of turning on my dust collection and letting you hear what this does to my dust collection. Let me do this first. The sander is not on. It's just a dust collection. It has this high-pitched whistling noise, and clearly the amount of air flowing through is not enough because even my dust separator, the can is getting squished in because there's not enough airflow for it to work. And you can actually see this on the bottom as well, because just sanding this for sub 5 minutes, it did not do well with dust collection. And as much as I want to say good things about this sander, well, when it comes to sanding itself, it's great, but the dust collection is a deal breaker for me. Absolutely. I had a feeling in the start this pipe actually came off a couple of times while I was sanding as well. I kind of had to hold it while I was doing it, but unfortunately this is out. And I'll show you each one of these discs here in a second and how much dust it has after about a minute or so of sanding. But this is not for me, 100%. Now, if you go back to the DEWALT, being a consumer, if you're sanding once in a blue moon, you're not making too many projects, and you just need a sander, right? Nothing wrong with this sander. It does well. The dust extraction on this is not as good either. And you can see this, how much dust is still left on there. But overall, a good sander. From a sanding perspective, they all do well. Really, dust collection is where the difference comes in. DEWALT is a consumer level brand or a consumer level sander, and it's not at these levels. This one does a lot better at sanding. The dust collection is absolutely horrible. I cannot run this in my shop. That whistling noise, even when I had my noise cancellation on, I could still hear it. That's just not happening in my shop. Now, as far as these two dust collectors are concerned, these two sanders are concerned, look, when it comes to 3M Xtract, it is a phenomenal sander. It is absolutely fantastic. You can see on the disc as well, there's only some sand that's left here in the center, but it did phenomenal when it comes to dust extraction, and it did fabulous when it was sanding as well. And I will have to say the same thing for 3M, MAXXT Xtract. Although if compared between the two, 3M Xtract's dust collection was a bit better. Sanding wise, they're both very similar. They feel very similar. Their gravity, the center of gravity as you hold the sander itself, is very much the same. The only difference between this one and this one I felt was this one has a bit of a lip to it, and this lip kind of helps your finger kind of hold on to the sander even better. And again, this is almost an inch lower than this one. You can see that it is almost an inch lower than the MAXXT Xtract. And obviously, the lower you are to the project, the lower of center of gravity you have, the better it's going to be. Now, as far as how much sand stayed on the discs, I hope you can see this. I've just peeled it off, but I haven't done anything to them. I'm gonna just flick each one, which is a good way to see how much dust is left. PioneerWorks definitely had the most leftover so far, and then, well, DeWalt is not too much further behind than the PioneerWorks when it comes to the amount of dust that came up. Um, so that's my final thought. I think the one that's from my shop, if you're wondering, is the MAXXT. I don't do enough sanding to buy a $100 sander and hang on to it. This one is nearly half price. And at the time of me buying it, there was a Black Friday deal, so I got it even cheaper. So I think this is the right sander for me. And the rest, we'll see what we can do with them. One last thing that I just want to mention, and this is a hot topic on YouTube and on forums, is that all these three sanders, after running for a little while, they get heated up and then they stop working. And I will tell you one thing that should resolve this issue. When you run a sander, no matter if it's 3M, MAXX, MAXXT, Premier, whatever, even the DEWALT, I would highly recommend that you put the you plug this thing in a place where the dust extractor is not connected to the same circuit. They require a certain amount of power, and if you starve them of that power, they will heat up more. They will stop working as well. I hope you'll give that a shot to any and all of your tools. I think dust extraction should be kind of kept separately. It will help all your tools last a lot longer. Well, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you took something away from it. Please like and subscribe the video, and take a look at some of my other videos, and I hope to see you guys again soon. That's all I got, guys. We'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.